Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive with Dr. Rebecca Risk. Do you ever feel that even though nothing seems seriously wrong and you pass all the medical tests, that you still feel that your health, pain, and fatigue are completely out of control? It doesn't have to be that way. Listen to the tips and suggestions given on our program today and take back control of your health. Now, here is Dr. Rebecca Risk.
Hi everyone, welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Today I'm talking with Dr. Eva Sapi. She is a trailblazer in Lyme disease research, and she has proven that Lyme has a protective layer called a biofilm. I was lucky enough to meet Eva last year at a conference, and I'm so happy to welcome you today, Dr. Sapi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So, with the work first I want to know how you got involved in dealing with Lyme. This wasn't the first thing that you did research on. So what happened to put you in that direction?
It's an interesting story because I was a cancer researcher. I was working at Yale. I was a research scientist. And, one day I just didn't feel well and I didn't understand. And, a couple of months later, still didn't feel well, nothing, no test, positive. So it was couple really rough moments. And finally, one test suggested Lyme disease. After I started to work on it, took me a very long time to even understand what's going on. And, a couple of scary moments in my life. And that is how I had to rethink, what I want to research. I was an ovarian cancer researcher, and I was with the patient when they get the chemotherapy. I'm sure you know that they don't have good prognosis. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with them, and I just said, at least you know what you have, and people taking care of you, and I don't even know what I have, and I felt very lonely. So that really shook my beliefs, and when I started to get better, and I started to read and try to understand what's going on, and I was shocked to see that so much not known about this disease, and I completely switched my cancer research focus, and I started to research Lyme disease.
Well, as a Lyme sufferer or survivor, I want to thank you. I've been following your research for many years, and I think without people like you who have been, we have to be affected to bring this word about, which I don't think is right, but I guess is how it starts. But what you've done has been groundbreaking for Lyme, and we're all thankful for that. Now, the way that you have this set up is you are working with your students at New Haven University. So how does that work?
So I was at Yale, and first of all, I'm not feeling well at this point. But I wanted to, I really like teaching. So I was looking for a teaching job at this point, different universities. And then one of the local universities, finally I was able to get a teaching job. In the first 2 years, first of all, I'm not feeling too good, yes. So the first 2 years I was, learn about, how to be a professor, how to, what to do in a classroom. And slowly I started to, figure out how to work with my students to be efficient. Now, when you work with students, obviously somebody walks into your office or to your lab, and you have to train them. At the same time, they have such an interesting questions. Later we're going to talk about, the latest, what is going on in my lab. And for example, just like 2 years ago, a student walked into my office and he asked the question whether Borrelia the Lyme bacteria, can survive in vacuum. And I was like, I don't know. Do you want to research it? And he said, absolutely. So we're working on a manuscript, and it's a shocking result. So when you're working with students, yes, I don't have technician. I don't have a postdoc. I don't have somebody who's working in a lab 24/7 with other universities. But at the same time, they bring in this fresh energy, fresh ideas, and I'm loving it.
Well, and even though it's students that are probably graduating and leaving, you're discovering some amazing things.
Thank you.
Now, before we get to that, I just want, can you explain to us why you need to do this? A lot of people believe that Lyme disease is treated with a couple weeks of antibiotics, and then you move on. But that's actually not the case. So, what are the reasons why Lyme can be so difficult to treat?
I mean, back to when I didn't feel well. Obviously, I was searching for answers, and I think the best answers I got from Lyme patients, because they told me what kind of treatment they got, how they feel after the treatment, what happens like a couple of months after the treatment, and I kept meeting with them. It's a lot of very good organization here in Connecticut, and I was lucky enough to meet with them very early and learn about the initiative. And I started to understand that this is a short term of antibiotics not efficient. Now, saying that, I remember it was a conference, and people asked me whether short term or long term, and I just looked at them and I said, I wish one day we're gonna have something which can eliminate this bacteria with a short term treatment. That would be the final goal, but right now we don't have this right now. So we really have to better understand what is Lyme disease. Later we're going to talk about, it is not just one bacteria, but probably multiple. So we really have to first understand what's going on before we started to develop different treatments. There's one bacteria, one treatment model. I think that's a very, very ancient approach. I think it's time to rethink how we treat Lyme disease.
Well, we definitely do. I mean, it's very common for people to go through treatment and then to feel sick again. And biofilm is something that's talked about a lot, and you've done a lot of research on that. So maybe we can start with what that is and why this is causing these problems.
Let's turn back the time a little bit. So we started the first research. Actually, what I did, I had no money for research at this point. I'm a professor. I had to teach. It was some internal money at the university, but really very small amount, like maybe $2,000 for a year. That was my budget. So the first thing we did, we went and actually collected ticks because it's free, yes. So I took my students and we went, the local places, and we collected thousands of ticks, and we looked at co-infections. I wanted to see what else is there other than the Lyme bacteria. That was the first research, and that research actually resulted a lot of interesting observation, like we found filarial nematode, which is not even bacteria. Just recently, the New York scientists actually confirmed the result. But after I went back to lab and I said, let's just start to culture Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria. So we started to culture, and I always tell my students, always repeat other people's experiment. Learn how can you repeat it? What do you find? Can you confirm those experiments? So that's what we did at the very beginning with my students. So we took Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria, and exposed it to different antibiotics. And we just looked under the microscope, very simple, what happens to this bacteria. And the very first experiment, we started to see that some kind of aggregates. It looked very strange under the microscope, and we didn't really understand. We saw there's some kind of contamination of the culture. So, fortunately, I was able to get a bacteria which has a fluorescent tag to it. So it's green. Okay. So I said, okay, repeat the experiment, because if it's green, we know it's coming from Borrelia. So we repeat next one. It's still this big blob of aggregates after antibiotics, and that's when we started to believe it might be true. So at this point, obviously, we knew about biofilms for other organisms, like Staphylococcus, for example, how much it makes this bacteria very resistant. So that was our hypothesis at this point, that if we have this form, that will be extremely resistant to standard antibiotics. So next experiment was to see whether it is true. So that was our 2011 paper when we showed that indeed this biofilm is very, very resistant. So I know you're asking what is biofilm.
Mm-hmm.
Think about when you go to your shower and you didn't clean it the last week because you got busy and it's sort of slippery, yes?
Yes.
So what you do is you take some bleach and spray it, but it's still slippery, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, because you have to scrub it. You have to scrub it. Now, why you have to scrub it? Now, on a shower, when you don't clean it, it forms biofilm forms. And biofilm has this slime layer. That's why it's slippery. This is called the mucopolysaccharide, big name. This is actually protects the bacteria what is under. So the reason you have to scrub it, even bleach not gonna eliminate. You really have to scrub mechanically to be sure that's eliminated. Of course, the bad news. If Borrelia can make this biofilm, how can we eliminate it? Yes, that is really now. It's in 2012 paper we showed that it has layers of protection. So the question is, how can we eliminate something like that?
Yeah, it is a very good question because it's been probably since you've done this study a topic of conversation of what do we do, because any patient who's gone through treatment with Lyme knows that when they stop they don't feel good, especially if their symptoms come back and they have to go back on whatever it was they were taking, whether it was herbs or antibiotics, and this is one of the reasons why Lyme is so hard to treat is the biofilm.
We believe so. I'm working on a paper. That's why I mentioned to you I'm finishing up my semester as a teacher, working on finals. But next week, hopefully, I can go back to this paper. There's an interesting study. We got some autopsy tissue from a patient who died from Lyme disease. The patient are very well documented. Is PCR, culture, seropositive. So we know she had Lyme disease. She was treated for 16 years with different antibiotics on and on. And at the end of 16 years, she ran out of money. Insurance didn't want to pay anymore. So she was without antibiotic for 3-4 months, and suddenly she developed this massive inflammation, and she died. So her tissue went to Columbia, New York, to James Goldman, the pathologist, and fortunately he understood that is a very, very important case, and he took all the autopsies, and he still has it. We're working very closely. We finished one study when we looked at major organs to see can we find Borrelia. If we find Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria, what form? And I hate to say, but we find it everywhere. We find it huge biofilms, and the worst part of it, because she died in inflammation. That we looked at inflammatory markers, and you could see the inflammatory markers right next to the biofilm. So we know that has to be some kind of correlation. So we're working on this paper. The other paper is right now we're working on, as I mentioned, about this it looks like Borrelia can even survive vacuum for a while. That's a shocking result. And the co-infections, looks like those Borrelia biofilms have more than just Borrelia. Looks like it's other bacteria inside of this biofilm. We just published a paper in infected skin. We find chlamydia inside the Borrelia biofilm. Now think about it. So Borrelia biofilm is already difficult to eliminate. Now you have an other bacteria which is probably happening even further. And the question I know you're going to ask, so how many more? That's exactly what we try to figure out right now.
Which is, really interesting, because when they're in biofilm, do we know what they're doing in there? Are they talking to each other? Are they hibernating? Do we understand what's happening?
Now that's again very good question. What happens under this big umbrella? So we know about persisters, Dr. Zhang's study from Johns Hopkins. That some of them, we call it sleeper cells. What they do, they go to the very low metabolic state, which is basically sleeping, And the problem is antibiotics are, working on active cells because they inhibit, active growing. So obviously they're not going to work on the sleeper cells. It's an interesting study just published saying even when they come back, the sleeper cell, when they're awakening, they have different genes, they express different genes, and looks like they're even different. So this is scary. So we definitely we have some sleeper cells. We have probably cells who are working on, new strategies to, evade whatever we throw at them. And communication, that's big. We call it quorum sensing. This is like emailing each other, not emailing now, texting each other. This is a new generation, texting each other all the time, and try to figure out, what to do when something dangerous coming. This is a completely new field. Biofilm research is it started really in the early 2000s. We're still in an early stage, learning from only a few model biofilm system. I think Borrelia just came as a new partner, and we still have to understand what we're dealing with here. As I mentioned, it is not just Borrelia. Can you imagine if it's under this big, castle? We have Borrelia, chlamydia. We have evidence maybe even H. pylori. Maybe, who knows? Maybe all those co-infections they love to live together and create this absolutely massive resistant form. One thing about Borrelia, if anybody has a chance to look at our 2012 PLOS1 paper, look at those images when we looked at in very high resolution. And maybe it will be clear why I'm saying it looks like a castle. It looks like a beautifully built castle. When a castle is built, bacteria can come and hide in a castle. I just watched Game of Thrones yesterday. I don't know you're a Game of Thrones fan. They all tried to hide in a castle, and that didn't work because fortunately the dragon took care of them. But so back to the Borrelia biofilm, I believe that's like a castle, and I never forget Dr. Borescano, Joe Borescano, famous Lyme physician, told me once that he believes that you first get rid of Borrelia after everything falls apart, and he can cure the patient. And I never forgot when I first looked at these images and looked like a beautifully built castle, and I wonder if you get rid of the castle like the dragons yesterday, that took care of the castle, everything falls apart, and after you can treat the disease. So I don't know. Right now, Rebecca, we really still have to understand how this castle is built and who is hiding in the castle.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. I feel like I should have warned people that there was Game of Thrones spoilers. We're going to take a quick break.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We're talking with Dr. Eva Sapi, and we're discussing Lyme disease. We're going to be back shortly.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
The largest syndicated alternative health talk program has come to the Voice America Network. The Dr. Bob Martin Show is the program that will answer your health questions and help you to heal your own body of many different ailments. Each week, you'll hear the answers that Dr. Bob gives to his callers that help them to be their own doctor most of the time. We'll also discuss developments on the healthcare front and what you need to do to keep your body in top form. The Dr. Bob Martin Show airs Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or send us an email to info info at voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're talking today with Dr. Eva Sapi, and she is a trailblazer in Lyme disease research. So, Dr. Sapi, we were talking about biofilm, and I want you to address something. It gets talked about a lot, that biofilm isn't happening in Lyme, or has only been proven in a laboratory, so isn't happening in people. And so can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Of course, that was the first question. So after we find biofilm in the test tube and we characterize it, I got lots of emails, you could imagine, saying, no, you're never ever going to find this in either a infected mouse or in infected human tissues. And at this point, actually, somebody sent me some mouse tissues, they infected with Borrelia. They sent me a few sites. And we first looked at the skin where they inoculated the bacteria, and we couldn't find it. I was so upset. I said, okay, that's not real. That's probably just maybe happening in a test tube. And so we keep looking. Fortunately, we got heart tissue from this mice. And somebody told me that if you want to find biofilm, you're probably going to find at the bottom of the heart. So we got the tissue, and the very, very first experiment, we did the staining, and it was right there. You cannot imagine, when I saw this image, how relieved I was that it might be real. So after, of course, the question was, can we find this in human tissue? And I was lucky enough to work with Dr. Zager from Austria, who actually sent me some tissue. This is a infected skin tissue called Borrelia lymphocytoma. He already analyzed this tissue. That was his patient. He already found, Borrelia in it. He said, try to see if you can see biofilm in this tissue. So that was the very first paper back in 2016, where we were able to analyze those tissues and prove that is indeed biofilm structures there. We had some biofilm markers we identified in our test tube research, and we used this marker to be sure and prove that it's indeed biofilm. We just published a follow-up research when we looked at these biofilms in infected skin tissues, and indeed we've seen it again, and as I mentioned, looks like it's even some other bacteria is inside of this biofilm. The next thing, as I mentioned, I'm working on it right now, this paper from this patient who died from Lyme disease. And again, we had 4 major organs, autopsy tissues, and unfortunately we found biofilm all 4. I know that's obviously something we need to continue, and it needs some, obviously some verification from other lab. I don't know that you've seen Dr. Zhang published a very interesting study when he injected the mice with the spirochete, the Borrelia spirochete, and also injected the mice with some aggregates. He calls it biofilm-like aggregates, and the result was absolutely different. You could see, I don't know, you had a chance to look at this paper, but it was a different inflammatory processes occurred when he injected these biofilm-like aggregates. So again, we need to understand it better. We need more research. We need people who go back and get more tissues. That's why I'm looking for some more biobank tissues. Working with some folks who are creating this new biobank. We need to have researchers who are interested in this and continue this research. I understand that just having one group saying that biofilm in the infected body is not enough. So I'm hoping that soon it will be more research on it.
Well, and to recognize it in a bigger picture will help patients who are claiming that they have symptoms when they stop treatment, because at the moment it's very difficult to get treatment longer than 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics, and a lot of people aren't better, or their symptoms come back, and this is hypothesized to be one of the reasons why. And it does make sense clinically when you look at it. People are well and they have no symptoms, they stop treatment, and then they have symptoms again.
I mean, the chronic infection biofilm model is established in other like staphylococcus research. Obviously, to really prove that the reason they relapse those patients is due to the biofilm nature of this bacteria. We still need additional proof. But Rebecca, I'm still very relieved that at least we have some idea where to look. I felt like even 10 years ago we sort of in this abyss. We didn't even know where to look. Why this bug is so difficult to eradicate. And when you don't have an answer for a patient, I could imagine how those physicians felt.
Mm-hmm. Well, and most people do want an end point, and there isn't always one because of this, or because of, and I'm sure there's way more we don't understand about Lyme as well. Now, in your research, you have done some research on stevia. Can you talk about that?
It was the stevia research came at a complete frustration because so what we did. We looked at the other biofilm research and looked at what kind of other we call the biofilm busters, we can maybe apply for Borrelia biofilm. So like Staphylococcus, very well studied. So whatever they said is working for Staphylococcus biofilm, we tried it on Borrelia biofilm and nothing works. Like nothing works. All antibiotics. Even when we find a good combination. With antibiotics, we put it on biofilm, hardly touching it. This is almost like, you could imagine years after years, it's nothing worse. And so at this point, we also looking at the biofilm and different properties, and we start to understand it is multiple layers of protection. I mentioned this slime layer. We figured out that it's multiple component of the slime layer is even calcium is protecting it. Some kind of extracellular DNA is protecting it. So it's like layers of protection. But the good news we understood at the same time from those images that there are channels there. So we understood that if we can open the channels, we might be able to send some agents. But how you open those channels? Some people say don't try to just try to threaten the biofilm because they just close the channels, but try to send we call the Trojan horse, yeah. When the Greek sends the Trojan the horse and they as a present and they came out and they killed all the Trojans. So, but okay, how you find a Trojan horse? And it was a 2011 Nature paper describing that if you add sugar next to antibiotics, you're waking up the sleepers. And when you're waking up the sleepers, your antibody going to work better. And that gives us an idea to try maybe some sugar compounds. So what you do when you want to try sugar, you just look around the lab. Okay, what kind of sugar we have in a lab? Okay, send your students to the local store. Pick up any kind of sugar you can imagine. And of course, stevia was one of them because I told them that everything which you would use in your coffee. So So very, very first experiment, we tried sugar without antibiotics, and stevia immediately worked. One of the liquid stevia worked. And I had to be honest, I was like, what? Without antibiotics. We didn't even need to combine it. It looks like it's affecting the biofilm. We did some high-resolution images. Looks like the biofilm is dispersed. How? We still try to understand. We have a chemist who is now isolating fractions. So far, we don't have luck with working with those fractions, unfortunately. So we still don't understand how. So this research is still underway because we really need to understand what's happening with stevia. We have some crazy ideas also. Maybe it's not the compound, maybe something else in the stevia, because the stevia leaf extract, not just stevia. So anyway, the meantime, Dr. Horowitz was very interested. So he actually, when he was treated his patient with antibiotic, he also gave them stevia, and actually because from Dr. Zhang research, he also gave them oregano. And he claimed between those two and antibiotic works much better. But again, we need more clinical trial. First of all, from our end, we need to understand how stevia works. So that research is still going on.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you for opening up the channels. So you're not breaking up biofilm, you're opening the door. Am I understanding that right? And then,
yes.
And then what happens then? Does the antibiotics or antimicrobial herbs go into the biofilm?
Mm-hmm. But the question is, okay, so all right, so we need something with open source channels. Okay, that makes sense. But after it is in, we still is dealing with a different population. Yes, the sleepers and the one who has altered, maybe altered some phenotype. Who knows what is in this biofilm, and who knows how many different bacteria in the biofilm? Yes. So we still have to understand when we go. Okay, so we're able to get in. What happens inside? How to blow the castle. I'm not going there, don't worry. How to blow the castle from inside. But again, we need to know who's in the castle.
Mm-hmm. So we're not quite understanding what's inside yet from what I'm gathering. We know that we know multiple bacteria are probably in there. We know that there's channels, and we know they're protecting themselves. And I mean, that's an important thing to understand so that we know why Lyme is so hard to treat. But for your purposes and for a cure, we need to understand this more.
Absolutely.
So one thing that's new and emerging is talking about Lyme persisters. Have you done any work with them?
I mean, when you work with biofilms, you're working with persisters.
Yeah.
That is a persister by definition. Yes, of course, we work with them. If you go back to 2011 papers, we had persisters. You create persisters by making a stationary culture. What does it mean? You let the culture to grow at a very high level, and that's when you start to create those persisters. The stationary culture is extremely difficult to eliminate. You could start to see the formation of these biofilms. They're usually very small aggregates. They're not attached to any surface. They're floating in the liquid, and that was a paper just came out from Dr. Zhang lab that when you inject that into the mice, you get more inflammation. So it's definitely something about these different cells when they're reaching a certain density. But what we find actually, if you're working with biofilm, especially attached biofilm to a surface, you can get these persisters even at a lower density. Let's have to mention something. Right now we're working with different tissues, and I have to mention we're also working with some malignant tissues to see whether we can see some spirochetal presence. So we really try to find what is exactly this spirochete function in the human body right now. So what we're seeing is Borrelia loves collagen. The only problem is our body is full of collagen, especially in the different part of the tissue. We have a surface for Borrelia which loves, and unfortunately, when Borrelia is in this collagen embedded environment, I still don't know what is going to eliminate it.
Well, I guess that's why we need more studies. And we are going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about this more when we get back. We're talking with Dr. Eva Sapi, and we'll be back shortly.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Take us on the go. It's even easier now. The Voice America Talk Radio Network has a mobile app for iOS, Android, or Amazon Kindle. Visit the Apple App Store, Amazon, or Google Play to download the app powered by Aircast. It's free and no registration is necessary. In minutes, you could be enjoying your favorite Voice America Talk Radio host no matter where you are, in the car, out and about, while traveling, or anytime you can't be close to your computer. Catch up on the archives you've missed or discover new shows on the spot. Search Voice America at your favorite app store.
We're on the pulse of the world with great shows and hosts. The Voice America Health and Wellness channel is also on Twitter. We've got ideas to keep you healthy, breaking health news, and more. Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAM Health. That's at VoiceAM Health.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Everybody, welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Eva Sapi. So you have done a lot of studies on what is also effective towards the Lyme bacteria, not just the biofilm. And what have you found with that?
I mean, obviously, when we started to see this form, the first question was, what can we use, to eliminate it? And the very first studies we did, we took regular standard antibiotics, and I said, okay, let's try a different combination. That didn't really work, so I said, okay, let's try some other antibiotics I heard from Dr. Horowitz and some Dr. Borescano they're using. Let's see, maybe they will be effective. And the first round of studies with regular antibiotics was very disappointing. They usually worked on the spirochete, and even some of them work on the stationary, the persisters. But if it came with biofilm, and especially when we put the biofilm in the collagen, as mentioned, borrelialized collagen, it looked like nothing working. So that's what I mentioned in the previously, that it was extremely frustrating. So at this point, a lot of people found us, like a small peptide, they discovered for biofilm worked very well against some other biofilm, didn't even touch it. I mentioned the stevia research. Stevia looked like at least able to do something with it. And recently we're trying some combination which was discovered for persisters, the daptomycin combinations. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on attached biofilms. We recently tried with Dr. Horowitz some dapsone and dapsone combination. This is a persister drug. It has some effect on attached biofilms, so we're actually publishing this data, and he's getting some success in his clinical studies. We also repeating some alternative treatment. We also repeated Dr. Zhang's study with the oregano oil. We found it has some effect. Again, we started to understand that we need a different approach when it comes to biofilm. And again, if you talk about Borrelia biofilm, hopefully we find something for it very soon. But as I mentioned, we just discovered that there's more in this biofilm than one bug. So we might have to repeat the whole thing and find agents which can affect, we call them mixed biofilm. Mixed meaning more than one bacteria in it. So it's a little challenging, I have to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is challenging, and I think that's what makes it so complicated. And you know, what do you see as the future of where this is going? Do you have some hope that we're going to find this solution and sort out how complicated this is?
I hope so. First of all, I always say you have to know your enemy first before you're able to eliminate it. We didn't know our enemy. We are shooting some unknown something, with our antibiotics, and after we surprised that, nothing happened really. So I think that now we started to understand enemies. We started to understand what kind of strategy they have to evade whatever we try to do. I always say, we have human brains, so hopefully we're able to develop a strategy which is even good for maybe those mixed biofilms. Again, every research we're learning something new. I mentioned this research we did with vacuum, no oxygen. The student just defended the thesis, and it's amazing to see, for example, high oxygen environment is also very, very toxic for Borrelia. So maybe we don't always need to think about, antibiotics or even antimicrobial agent, but maybe oxygenate the body. Just this morning, I ran on my treadmill, and it's amazing how much better I feel right after. So maybe we just need a completely different, more holistic approach how to deal with this bacteria.
Well, no, I think we do, from my experience, and you can correct me, but antibiotics aren't doing it for people, and the people that do find wellness are the ones that are approaching it from a different view and not just straight up doing antibiotics. Even if they do antibiotics, the ones that get better are doing other things. They're either adding herbs in or they're doing other therapies, and it seems like this just isn't going to have a one size fits all cure.
Absolutely. When I was dealing with, of course, I took those, antimicrobials. That didn't really make me better, and I changed my diet. I started to look at a way more holistic way. I said, my body is struggling with something, so I have to do everything to help the body to overcome this. I give you one example what helped me. It was somebody said, try some lymphatic massage. I never even heard what it is. They said maybe your lymph system is stagnant and cannot clear up the infection. The most pleasant massage you can ever have, and tremendous help after. So we have other modalities than antibiotics which can really, really help. And some people try heat treatment. I always say you will know you know your body the best. You know what works for your body. So you could try, of course, take some antimicrobials, but at the same time think about how you help your body with diet. I always liked, even when I was very sick, a very light exercise just to move my body. I'm even just walking on a street. Just sitting on a sofa didn't do anything for me, even when I didn't feel well. So everybody should understand what their body needs, and no, it's not just antimicrobials. That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. When people ask me what got me better, I used the Cowden protocol, which are herbs that you have studied, but I also had knowledge of Chinese herbs and other things because I was I'm a practitioner, and I did other things, and I can't look back at what I did and say it was this one thing of everything I did. I look back and say it's everything that I did that got me better.
I think the wheel got you better. I always say you have to have the wheel to get better, And you will, absolutely. And I always say the most important is vitamin L, which is love. Just never give up, just keep a positive attitude that you're going to get better. I think that was the most important part of my recovery.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I'm going to start prescribing vitamin L. This is great. I wonder how you bottle that.
They use it for cancer treatment. They ask the patient to watch funny movies, and this is one of the best treatments.
Yeah, there's actually been studies on that, and I have prescribed. I actually wrote out a prescription for someone to watch comedies because her boyfriend was teasing her, and she was doing so. Now, is there anything that you're working on right now that is coming and emerging that might change the view of Lyme?
Yes, we try to develop a new model system. Unfortunately, we use mouse for testing the in vivo or antibiotics in animals, and unfortunately, it's extremely expensive. And you cannot really test a lot of different combination, maybe herbal agent combining with regular antibiotics. So we understood that we need a different system, and I learned we're working on something called zebrafish system, and I just spent some time last week with somebody who's using this system to test different agents, and she showed us that you can have like a little plate, you can put the embryos. You can infect them, for example, with Borrelia, and after you can put different agent for it. So this is what we're working on. I'm really hoping that's gonna give us like a platform to test, not just like, for example, right now when we test agent, we use only one strain of bacteria, which is the B31, and it's actually not even the right one because that's not even that virulent. So. And of course, when you test one agent, whether it works on every single strain of Borrelia, the European strain, the new strains right now, you need a system to test that. So, and we don't have that. We just don't have that. So I'm hoping that zebrafish research will provide this platform that can really efficiently test those antimicrobial agents, so we can find the right combination. And hopefully, maybe because it's seriously so inexpensive, maybe we can set up a thing for mixed infection, test antimicrobials for mixed infections. So we need a new platform to test our agents.
Well, and that's the thing as well. If you're doing studies just on the Lyme or the Borrelia, and then we know that there's other infections mixed with it that can add to the complication of what you need. Or I'm gonna hypothesize that it will add to how complicated the biofilm is, because wouldn't they all just add their own idea or their own structure to the biofilm?
Absolutely. For example, we don't know why chlamydia is so frequently found in Borrelia biofilm, but one thing we know that Borrelia doesn't use iron. A lot of papers show that other biofilm, iron is one of the main components. And we were thinking, for example, chlamydia can use iron. So maybe chlamydia helps to make the iron castle. Now here we are again.
Well, and that is. It will change how we treat it, because you'll have to know what infection you have in biofilm, which makes it even harder to test for, because if it's hiding, you won't necessarily know what you're dealing with. So I'm foreseeing a future where we'll have tests for what your biofilm is in your body, so that you know what you need to treat it and what infection is there.
That would be wonderful. But again, we need a system which is efficient in test multiple strains, multiple infection, multiple agents, and without breaking our budget, yes?
Yeah, yes. So breaking the budget is an important one, because we want you to continue doing what you're doing. And now, if anybody wants to help out, is there a way that they can donate?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to post on Facebook page. We have a website for donation. This is the university official website. But if anybody wants to help us, please. First of all, thank you. You can just send a text and just with a letter saying that's for Lyme disease research. We have a Lyme disease account, and again, all the money going to the students. A little bursar, a little material, and that's how we practically survive every day in the lab.
Yeah, which is important. Now, is there anything that you want to finish off with that people need to know about what's going on before we end the show?
I know maybe that's what we talked about a little bit scary because now she's talking about biofilm, mixed biofilm. We don't even know what to use for those mixed biofilms. But at the same time, I think that the fact that we know what we're dealing with, we know what to research, I think that's really going to help us to really move this field. I felt like the last 30 years, remember, it's from 1982, when Border Ferri found Borrelia. That was a long time ago. And we're still struggling with this disease. So I'm hoping that finally we get out from this stagnant phase and we can really move forward quickly and find potential cures, and hopefully we're not going to have those 2 million people, like it was suggested, affected by Lyme disease.
Well, I hope so too, and not just for my sake, but for everybody's sake. We know that Lyme is emerging, and we're all going to be affected pretty quickly as global warming and climate change is changing where ticks are. So we do need, this to change. And I thank you so much for what you've done for all of us. I appreciate you and the work that you've done.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody who supported us in the past and recently in the future. Thank you very much. Again, this is just students with fresh ideas and lots of passion, lots of energy in the lab, and I'm hoping that we can keep this going. Thank you very much for your support.
Oh, thank you. Now, if anybody has any questions for you, is there a place they can get a hold of you?
Oh, absolutely. And we have a Facebook page. Which is very easy, just University of New Haven Lyme Disease Group, it will pop up. Or just send me an email. My email is very easily can be found, but it's my first initial esapi@newhaven.edu. But again, very easily can be found on the university website. Just Google my name.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today. I loved having this conversation.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I want to thank everybody for listening today. If you want to hear more about my journey with Lyme disease, you can find that on my website at dr-risk.com. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest. And thank you so much for listening today. Be sure to make today a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive. Please join Dr. Rebecca Risk again next Monday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. We'll talk more next week.